Facebook Live.
We're on time here. 6 minutes.
The last introduction, or you two doing something? This young lady in the front row, her name's Olive Waller. She's done everything she could, you know, these talks. So, I'd like to introduce you to Chuck Long.
How old are you? 9. They drag you to come watch? You really like to listen, huh?
This is her grandmother, and this is Dean's wife, who we had lunch with.
Hi, nice to meet you. She wanted to come.
All right, what grade are you in? How slow well, I'm glad you're here.
Jimmy's gonna introduce you
Okay.
in a minute or two.
Better keep it PG in here then, huh? Or G. Yeah, you need to keep it G.
Grandmother.
Hello there. How are you doing?
Yeah, they just built this 2 or 3 years ago.
Well, they've got over 20 seats outside. They do this line too. Vision's no good. What time is it?
It is 56. 50, actually it's 53.
Oh, look at that. How about that?
Did you play with dirt eggs or something?
I'm trying to find it. Chuck, I'm trying to find out who that might be. I just sent a text out to all my fraternity brothers, but, hey, you know, Pete, transfuses are these guys are all tied in. I'm trying to find out where he's on this thread. Yeah, you got me intrigued. We'll see what happens here.
I'll just stand.
Last January, Charlie Whitmack was here. He's a mountain climber, and he swum the English Channel, but he said, you're on to something, this personal approach to the speakers. When you personally invite them and tell them where you're from and who you are and what you're trying to do, he says it means more to the speakers. But the problem was, after he was here last winter, it was time to plan out this second season. And the first year, I really got lucky to get 3 people to agree to 3 separate dates. 2 of those dates 12 and 15 months in advance. I got a little lucky. And I talked to a number of people, friends. I went to the library board for suggestions of who they'd like to come here this year. And good ideas, good input. but I was just a little lost. Who do you call first? And somebody might not be available, and I needed some help. And I called my friends Darlis and Jim Jensen, and I said, can I take you out to lunch? And I'd like to tell you about this speaker series. I called them for a couple reasons. They're successful business people, and successful business people know how to get things done. But the other reason is I know they've got a thick Rolodex. We all have acquaintances and friends, and then in business, business associates, and I imagine they go to conventions and meet people through their industry that way. But I said, and they're in the trophy business, so a lot of these people are athletes. But I said, if you can help me find the first speaker, that's all I need. And I got good help, we'll get the other two. And I've learned every time you find a speaker, it helps to find the next speaker. And I said, if you can help me get the first one. And so they mentioned names of people they know. And they're names that everybody in this room would know. And some, like our guest today, their names known by people across the nation. And when our guest today, when his name was mentioned, I said, stop, put him at the top. He would be perfect. The reasons are so obvious, we don't even need to discuss it, see if he'll come here. Jim called me about a week later, and he said, in principle, he agrees to this. He'd like to come to Lakeview. He's willing to, come here. He's got a couple questions, and he's got to check on a couple things, but in general, yes, he'd like to do this. And I said, very good, and we hung up the phone. The next time I saw Jim, both of us said, we both realized within 10 seconds of that phone call, maybe a Saturday afternoon in October isn't the best time for a quarterback in the College Football Hall of Fame. But everything worked out, and here we are today. So welcome to the library. Thank you for attending. And to make today's introduction is my friend Jim Jensen from Trophies Plus.
I wrote mine out. I've got an elegant speaker here and an elegant speaker there, and then you get me in the middle, and that's the part that's... I've got just some notes and things to share a little bit. I've known Chuck for quite a while just because of our relationship with the Iowa Games and the Iowa Sports Foundation. Chuck is the CEO of that, and we've been a partner of them and done the medals and the awards for the Iowa Games and Live Healthy Iowa and the senior games and the corporate games and a lot of different things for a lot of times. So I love it when they call me and say, hey, we got an idea, but we need some help. And I'm like, cool, that's great. And so it was really awesome when I got to call him and say, hey, I've got an idea and I need some help. And he said, cool, that's great. And so this worked out really great. And it's so awesome that we can bring him here. I love the fact that Chuck is, he's not an Iowa boy, born and bred. He's an Illinois kid and Oklahoma roots, and he still has done so much for this state. And to come back and still be a huge presence in the state is just a huge thing. And that, to me, kind of personifies small town Iowa, which is what we are, and so he just fits in so well. So some of my notes, just some things to talk about this great quarterback. In the fall of 1979, Chuck Long quarterbacked his high school team, Wheaton North, to the Illinois State Football Championship. They beat LaSalle Peru 14-6. Chuck threw for -3 yards. I mentioned this because my fantasy quarterback last week threw for -3 yards. That's kind of that story is like, okay, here's the low of things, right? He went on to become probably the greatest quarterback in school history by far, but also one of the greatest quarterbacks that college football's ever seen. So to be a minus, negative yardage in a championship game, we've all been in that low, we've all seen that before, and so, it's kind of an inspirational thing to know that the greats have bad days too, which is really cool. He finished second to Bo Jackson in the Heisman Award rankings, and I met Bo Jackson a number of years ago at the Bob Feller Museum, and I mentioned that to him. And Bo Jackson said that Chuck Long was one of the greatest college football players that he ever saw. I did not reciprocate that back to Bo Jackson. He's played in the NFL with the Packers and the Rams and drafted by the Lions, coaching stops in Iowa and Oklahoma, San Diego State and Kansas. He still coaches today for the Arlington Renegades, where he's on the team with Bob Stoops, another great Iowa Hawkeye. And I've said about the CEO of the Iowa Games, which is where we started. A couple of things that, we had lunch today with Chuck, and it was fun because we've had some alumni people, we've had some people that were at some of the bowl games in '82 and in '85. And it's fun to just, you remember these stories, but when you get together with a group of people and talk about them again. So there's some things that I hope he talks about today. The American Needs Farmer logo was a big thing that started during his era. And of course, we all talk about the naked bootleg against Michigan State. It was probably the greatest thing out in the history of college sports. If you haven't YouTube that, go do that right away. So I hope, just for my personal, I hope we can hear some of those fun stories. But if you could, let's have a round of applause for Chuck in a second. But also afterwards, Chuck has said he'll stick around, make sure everybody that wants to see him gets a picture and an autograph. If you didn't bring something, I printed out some pictures over here that you can grab one and have him sign for you. So again, we just want to really take this opportunity to thank you so much for being in our small town and joining us today, and we really look forward to having you. So ladies and gentlemen, Chuck Long.
Thank you, Jim. And Jim mentioned we're in business together, and you always want to keep your business partners happy, right? So, that's a big reason why I'm here too. But we really enjoyed our relationship with Trophies Plus, and as Jim mentioned, they provide our medals, our trophies, our plaques that we use throughout the year. We couldn't do it without them, and it's been a great relationship. I'm actually in my 10th year of being the CEO and executive director of the Iowa Sports Foundation, and I told these guys at lunchtime it's the longest job I've ever had. So, I was in college coaching for 20 years, and if you're good, you move out to move up. If you're not so good, you get fired and you moved out. So I've been on both ends of that spectrum, and I was never in one place more than 5 years, over 20 years of coaching. So this is the longest job I've ever had. I've been with the Big Ten Network. I was with the Big Ten Network for 8 years as an analyst and commentator, and that was a great run. I enjoyed that. But I really love the job I'm doing, and it's because of people like Jim here in the state of Iowa. It gave me a chance to come back to Iowa. I love this state. It's always been good to me, and I just felt like, I owe it to the people to come back and be good for them and to them as well. I want to get a feel of the audience today. Hawkeyes, raise your hand, please. Hawkeyes, all right. Cyclones, oh, we have a number of Cyclones in here. We're kind of close to Nebraska. Nebraska Cornhuskers, okay. Minnesota Gophers, no Minnesota Gophers. Anybody else? Drake?
Yes.
All right. How about you and I?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else out there? Missouri?
North Dakota State.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I'll start off with a little joke. So this Hawkeye is rolling down the street and sees this lamp on the ground. He picks up the lamp. All of a sudden, a genie pops out. He goes, "Oh my gosh, a real live genie." Genie says, "Yep, I'm a real live genie. You get one wish. One wish only. What do you want?" Hawkeye says, "I want to live forever." Genie says, "No, can't do that. Can't make you live forever. You got another one?" He goes, "Yeah. I want to die the day after Iowa State wins the national championship." Genie says, "You tricky son of a gun." Okay, you can use that on any team. So I'm here to tell you some stories about my career. We'll dive into that, and I have some really fun ones along the way, and then I'm going to open up for questions at the end. So whatever I miss, go ahead and ask me at the end, all right? We'll make it more interactive that way. But Jim mentioned that, well, a little bit about myself. A lot of people don't know this, but I grew up a Boomer Sooner. Yeah, my side of the family are all Oklahomans. So there's 4 generations of Oklahoma Sooners in my family. Not a lot of people know that. I was born in Norman, Oklahoma. We moved up to Illinois, Wheaton, Illinois. If anybody know where Wheaton is? Yeah. Western suburb of Chicago. We moved up there when I was 3 years old. So I was raised in the Chicagoland area, but I grew up a Boomer Sooner. Okay, so you guys remember the traditional Thanksgiving Day, Nebraska and Oklahoma, every Thanksgiving. Our house shut down. My dad was born and raised in Norman, Oklahoma. My mom, Ponca City, Oklahoma. And it was all about the Boomer Sooner, you know. And they were good back then. I mean, the 70s, they won 3 national titles in the 70s, and so I was a young kid, and I was impressed by that, obviously. But so we're about the only Oklahoma Sooner family in Wheaton, by the way. But that's how I grew up. I grew up a Boomer Sooner, didn't really know much about Iowa at the time. And as Jim mentioned, I had the dubious record of throwing for -3 yards in the state championship game my junior year. We were, and this is a good story for youngsters or grandkids that may not have a system in place that fits them, or just how to persevere and how to get through things and fight through things. Well, I was a 3-sport athlete. You know, I didn't really think much past the next day. You know, no one really knew what our future was going to be. I knew I was going to go to college. I thought I was going to be in state Illinois somewhere, you know, better tuition for my family and myself. So I'm going through my high school career, and I liked all 3 sports. And so I threw for -3 yards in our state championship game. We won the game. I played for a Hall of Fame coach in high school, and we were very successful, but we ran the football. We played great defense and ran the football. I was a running quarterback back then. We threw the ball 5 times a game. That was it. And that's how we did it. So we go through our senior year. I go through my senior year in 1980, and I'm not getting any recruiting looks at all. Just some letters in the mail, but everybody did that. But I wasn't getting any phone calls. Well, I start basketball practice my senior year, and I'll never forget this as long as I live. But I got the phone call that changed my life forever in December of my senior year. So football's done. My high school career of football is over with. Just started basketball practice, and it's mid-December. It's a snowy night on a Monday night, okay? And I get home, and what about that phone call, that moment that changes your life forever? This was it for me. And I get this phone call, and I answer the call, and it's Bill Snyder. The great Bill Snyder was my offensive coordinator in Iowa, went on to Kansas State and became a Hall of Fame coach at Kansas State. Maybe the greatest turnaround in college football history at Kansas State, to be honest with you. But so he goes to Kansas State and does what he did, but he was our coordinator at the time in 1981 through 85 when I was there. Well, I answer the phone. I'm the oldest in our family. We've never been through this before. And I pick up the phone, and I say, yeah, this is Chuck. And I said, Chuck, and he's a really monotone guy. Chuck, this is Coach Bill Snyder of the University of Iowa football. And if you're interested, we'd like to bring you in this weekend for an official visit. Come on, Tom, is this you? That was my buddy Tom. He goes, no, this is not Tom. This is Coach Bill Snyder of the University of Iowa football. We'd like to bring you on an official visit. So I talked to him a little bit longer, and my dad's standing there, and I hang up the phone. And, son, who was that? And my dad's was a big time college football fan. He just loved everything about it. It's this coach from Iowa. They want to bring me in, fly me in this weekend for an official visit. Well, are they going to pay for it? I said, I think so, Dad. I think they're going to pay for it. So, long story short, he drives me to Chicago O'Hare Airport. I fly into Cedar Rapids. I'll never forget it. And we land, and John Streif, if you know that name, was a great trainer for a long time in Iowa. Picked me up at the airport. Welcome, Chuck. Welcome to Iowa. Drives me to the IRP, the Iowa River Power Company. Who's been there? I ordered the biggest prime rib I've ever seen in my life. It went over the plate. I wanted to be a Hawkeye right on the spot, you know. So I meet this wonderful staff, and this staff is legendary. This is the staff of 5 Hall of Fame coaches, and they all became respectively at their own universities the all-time winningest head coaches. You had Hayden Fry, of course, Kirk Ferentz, Barry Alvarez in Wisconsin. Bob Stoops was a GA at the time. Well, he was a player at the time, became GA later. Bill Snyder, I mentioned. Dan McCarney for all his Cyclones in here. What a fabulous staff that was. All Hall of Fame coaches, all-time winningest coaches. So I meet this fabulous staff. Of course, I meet the legendary Hayden Fry with all his charisma. And, you know, he's the type of guy, you shake his hand, if you feel like he's known you forever, you know. really good research. You know, he knew all about me and my family, that I was a Boomer Sooner and everything. I mean, how do you know all that? Well, I had this big prime rib. I meet the staff, and I'll never forget going back to my hotel room that night. I'm thinking, do they have the right guy here? I mean, come on, -3 in a game, 4 to 5 times a game. I'm like, maybe they have the wrong guy here. Wait, I want to see what happens this weekend. So I go through the weekend, and if you know anything about recruiting weekends back then, they dine you. I mean, you eat all kinds of good food, and then you go on all these tours, an academic tour, a campus tour, a facility tour. And then you go see a basketball game, the whole thing. Sunday rolls around, and Hayden had his MO was he'd bring you into the office and offer you a scholarship or not. He had this big leather couch, big, oak table. He's presidential, sitting behind there. He goes, "Charlie, have a seat." He called me Charlie. "Charlie, have a seat." So we're just chit-chatting. He goes, "Charlie, here's what we're going to do. We're going to offer you a full ride scholarship to play at Iowa." I jump out of that couch and I shake his hand. I go, "Coach, I want to be a Hawkeye right now." "Chuck, settle down, man. Hold on. Go home and talk over with your folks, and this is the place for you." I go, "Okay, but I know I want to be a Hawkeye." Well, I said, "By the way, what does that mean, a full ride scholarship?" He said, "Well, we're going to cover everything, room, board, books, tuition, the whole thing." I said, "Wow, no money comes out of our family pocket?" "Nope." So I'm thinking, I'm flying home now to O'Hare. My dad's going to pick me up. Thinking, man, do they really have the right guy here? That's pretty cool. So I land, my dad picks me up, and my father had a great sense of humor. Just a wonderful man. I never had a bad day in his life. Picks me up, he goes, "How'd it go, son?" I go, "Dad, I think they've offered me a full ride scholarship." He goes, "Well, what does that mean?" I said, "Well, they said they're going to cover everything, room, board, books, tuition, everything." He gets this look on his face. He goes, "Have they seen you play, son?" That was wonderful. I go, "I know, Dad, it's crazy." So we get home, and Hayden was always great with the follow-up. That's what made Hayden special. He always followed up with people, and so his customary follow-up was to call that night to the house and make sure I got home okay. And then talk it over with, Mom and Dad, get the parents on the phone and explain everything. Well, he gets my dad on the phone, and then meets my mom on the phone, and they get off the phone. "Oh, son, it's true. You're going to get a scholarship to Iowa." Anyway, that was a phone call from Bill Snyder, mid-December 1980, that changed my life forever. Football's taken me all over the world because of that phone call. Well, anyway, I came to Iowa in 1981. Magical year. Who remembers that year? Who was there in the stands that year, 1981? Anybody? Yeah. And so that was the turnaround year. Now let me set this up. Michigan and Ohio State had the stranglehold of the Rose Bowl for 15 years straight. It was either Ohio State or Michigan. Iowa broke through. It was the first school outside of those big two to break through and go to the Rose Bowl, which I believe made anything possible for anybody across the country. Is why you're seeing so much parity today. But Hayden, that was Hayden's third year, and he had that magical staff, as I mentioned, and it was 1981. I was basically redshirted that year. Okay, I was not. I played in 2 games, and they're kind of a neat story. But we played Nebraska the very first game. And if anybody asked me what was the game that turned it all around for Hayden Fry, it was this one. 1981. We weren't even ranked, probably 60th in the country. Nebraska was 6th in the country coming in. They were loaded. They came into Iowa City, and we upset them 10-7. And the roar of that crowd, I'll never forget. I go, my goodness, this is unbelievable. We just beat Nebraska. And having Oklahoma roots, OU Nebraska, one of the biggest rivalries in the history of the game, my grandparents couldn't believe it. So anyway, we beat Nebraska 10-7, and then we lost the next game to Iowa State. A guy named Dwayne Crutchfield ran all over us. Remember that name? He ran for like 240 that day. And then we beat UCLA the following week to go 2-1, and we were off and running. Well, that last game was against Michigan State, if you recall. We needed Ohio State to beat Michigan, okay? If Michigan beats Ohio State, they go to the Rose Bowl. We needed Ohio State to beat Michigan, and of course we had to beat Michigan State. And if you remember, they announced the Ohio State-Michigan score midway through the third quarter or fourth quarter. Ohio State upset Michigan, or beat Michigan, and then we beat Michigan State, and they were throwing roses out of the press box. Throwing roses out of the press box. I'll never forget it. I'm just a young kid. I'm not even playing. Well, I played in 2 games that year, okay? I played like a quarter of the Northwestern game. We were beating them 64-0 on the road, and he said, "Chuck, get in the game." I threw like 1 pass, okay? And then we go to the Rose Bowl, and who went to the 1982 Rose Bowl? Anybody in here? Okay, well, it's not a very good game, right? So we're getting beat 28-0 by Washington, and I'm sitting on the sideline, and it was about a minute to go, and there was a TV timeout, and he looks at me, he goes, "Charlie, get in there and get on TV for the hometown crowd." Okay, I rolled out there, get in the Rose Bowl game. Now, I'm in the Rose Bowl game. Let me tell you how the power of the Rose Bowl. It's not so much now with the playoffs, but so I get the last 2 snaps of the game, all right? And the credits are rolling, the game's over. I get 2 snaps, and that was it. And I go back. We had a little bit of time after the bowl game to go back to your hometown before school started, a couple weeks. I go back to Wheaton. They practically threw a parade for me in Wheaton. I said, my buddy said, "Chuck, you played in the Rose Bowl." I said, "Guys, I only played 2 plays. You played in the Rose Bowl." I said, "What did the grass smell like? What did it feel like?" Anyway, that was the power of the Rose Bowl back then. Just a magical moment if you play in that game. Well, 1982 rolls around. I earned a job in spring, okay? I earned a starting job, and it was a really good spring for me. And Hayden names me the starting quarterback going into the 1982 season. Well, our very first game is at Nebraska. We had a very young football team. We graduated a lot of players off the 81 squads. We go out to Nebraska, and they had their entire team back, and they were upset. They had revenge on their mind, and they were going to take it out on me. So we go into this game, and it's 120 degrees on the field. It was so hot, and you could see the waves of heat rolling off that hard turf. And so, let me set it up for you. I have 2 sets of grandparents there from Oklahoma. I have about 20 family members there. Okay, so they're there, and I got them all tickets. Absolutely the worst day of my career. Threw interceptions, ball snaps over my head, fumbled the ball, threw balls in the dirt. It's just miserable. So Hayden always wore his white pants, right? White pants, white shoes, black top. Kind of that's what he did. Even in a hot day, that's what he did. Middle of the 4th quarter, I call a timeout. Now we're getting beat 42-0 at this point. I call a timeout. I go to the sideline. He goes, "Charlie, what are you doing? This game's over with. Why are you calling a timeout? Let's get this game over with. Keep the clock running." I proceeded to throw up all over his white pants. All over. He looks down, he goes, "Get this boy out of here right now." So, that was my first start as an Iowa Hawkeye football. Now it gets better. I go in the shower up. I come out. Now I got to face my 20 family members, right? I come out. My little old Southern grandmother, bless her heart, "Chuck," comes right up to me and says, "Chuck, you don't have to play football anymore if you don't want to." She wanted me to quit on the spot. "Man, Mom, just give me a break here. It's the first game." Anyway, true story. She wanted me to quit because she knew how good Nebraska was. Anyway, we go on and have a really, one of my favorite years. People ask me about the 85 season, and I'll get to that. But one of my favorite years, if not my favorite, was our Peach Bowl year in 1982. We were a really young team, and we were fighting and scratching and clawing to get to 7-4. We ended up going 7-4 and we started off 0-2. So we managed with this great staff, of course, with Hayden's leadership, get to 7-4. We go to the Peach Bowl, and we beat a good Tennessee team in the Peach Bowl, which is the first bowl victory for Iowa since the 50s. So we went, we won it in '82. But that was a really cool game in Atlanta, at Fulton County Stadium in Atlanta that on New Year's Eve. And that was the game people ask me about, when did you finally belong or felt like you belonged in the Big Ten? It was after that game. During the course of that year, I was the starting quarterback, of course, but I never felt totally comfortable being a starter yet in the Big Ten. I was fighting my way through it, Every game was really hard, and the mental part of the game was really hard, but that Peach Bowl just kind of unfolded, and all of a sudden I felt like, you know what, I belong. So we ended up going to the Gator Bowl the next year. We had a good offensive team, and then we had the Freedom Bowl in 1984 was our first was our bowl game that year. We had a tough ending to that year. We had some injuries, and we kind of stumbled at the end of the year to 8-4. And then we went out to this Freedom Bowl, this inaugural Freedom Bowl in Anaheim, California, and I threw for 461 yards in that game, but it was pouring rain. And a little sidebar story. So we're on the bus, and it's just pouring rain in Anaheim, California. We had a beautiful week, sunshine the whole week, and it's just pouring rain. I'm like, oh my gosh, how am I going to throw the ball tonight? I'm sure Hayes is going to run the ball a lot more. So we get to the game, get dressed, we go out in the pregame warm-up, and it's just pouring. And I couldn't grip the ball. There's duck after duck. I couldn't get a spiral on it. And I'll never forget going back in. I had to get our clothes off and put a new shirt on underneath because we were all wet. But our great receiver, Billy Happel, said, hey, Chuck, how are you going to throw the ball? I mean, you couldn't even throw the ball in the pregame warm-up. So I don't know, Bill. I hope he runs it. Well, we go out there, we throw for 461 yards. I don't know how we do. Those guys caught everything I threw, and duck after duck after duck, and it was unbelievable. But so that Freedom Bowl, I had a decision to make. I could have either gone to the NFL and declared, because what happened was it was a funny NCAA rule. I'm the only player that's taken a snap in 5 bowl games in the history of the game. So the NCAA, because I played a little bit that freshman year, and I played in the Rose Bowl. Well, at the time, you could not redshirt freshmen in the Big Ten. That was why Hayden played me a little bit. Well, then the next year, they took that rule away. They said you can redshirt freshmen. So I got cheated out of the year. So I was actually a senior twice at Iowa. So I was a freshman, sophomore starter, junior, Gator Bowl, senior, the Freedom Bowl. Well, the NCAA came back and said, hey, if you want an extra year, you can have it. Otherwise, I was thinking after the Freedom Bowl, I was gone. I had to go to the NFL. I had no choice. Well, then they came back and said, hey, we feel like we cheated you out of the year. You can have that extra year. So I was actually a senior twice. Took my 5th year. We won the Big Ten championship in '85, and it was a magical year for us. Next year will be the 40th year of that reunion. So yeah, it's pretty cool, But anyway, so I came back on a wonderful team in 1985. I knew we were going to be good, and I always wanted to be not only a Big Ten champion quarterback, but a Rose Bowl quarterback as well. So a starting quarterback. So we had this great year, and I'll point out a couple of games that you'll enjoy. We played Michigan State. We just vaulted to #1 in the nation in both polls. Okay, we're #1 now. And we're playing a really good Michigan State team who almost beat us. And they had a great running back in Lorenzo White, rushed for 2,000 yards that year. They had a really good team. George Perlis was their head coach, and he was turning things around at Michigan State. Well, they came into town, and we were on TV, and they were back and forth, and we're down 4 points with about 2 minutes to go. And we go on this 2-minute drive down to the 2-yard line. And we call our last timeout with about 28 seconds to go in the game. So I get to the sideline. I always say, I've studied leadership all my life, all my career, and Hayden was one of the greatest leaders I've been around. Well, great leaders can think outside the box, and I really believe that. They know how to think outside the box. Well, I go to the sideline, and Hayden says, all right, Charlie, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run an isolation play. It's called 47 pop out. It goes between the left guard and the center. It's just a downhill fullback lead, You guys have seen it 100 times, running back just right down that gap and score, leap over and score the touchdown, give it to Ronnie Harmon. He says, call, I left, 47 pop out, but don't tell anybody. You're not gonna give it to Ronnie. You're gonna fake it to Ronnie. You're gonna put it on your right hip and you're gonna go around the right side and score a touchdown. I looked at him like he had two heads. I go, what are you talking about, Coach? First of all, you see me run. Second of all it takes is one backside defender to stay at home and tackles me. And if he tackles me, the game's over. It's all over. We'll run the clock out. Charlie, now keep in mind, we've never practiced this play in 5 years I was here. Not one time do we even talk about it, practiced it, nothing. It's not even in the playbook. Charlie, I've been coaching 40 years. You go in there and do what I tell you to do, you're gonna score. I said, okay. So I went in there, I call I left, 47 pop out, ready break. Get up to the line, I take the snap, I go around, I fake it, I go around the horn, I go, my gosh, there's nobody there. How did he know that? I put the ball up to make sure the referee saw it, right? I go, how did he know that? I get the sign, I told you, Charlie, just listen to me. Anyway, Mission State that day, a little trivia for you. Their starting strong safety was, at Mission State, anybody know? Phil Parker, the current defensive coordinator at Iowa. And their linebackers coach was the late, great Norm Parker. And even better yet, their defensive coordinator and defensive back coach, who his backside defender. So let me give you a little football 101. When you're on the goal line and you play goal line defense, you never chase the ball that's going away from you. You just stay at home and wait for the bootleg, wait for a trick play back there. That backside defender should have waited there if he did his job, and he would have tackled me and they would have won the game. But he went for the fake, which allowed me to score. Well, that was this coach's defensive back who blew the game for Michigan State. And the D coordinator at the same time for Michigan State, and the guy's name is a guy named Nick Saban. It's tough to beat Nick Saban. I had to bring that up. So anyway, a little trivia with the coaching and football world. You cross paths a lot. So that was Michigan State. Well, a couple weeks later, we're playing Michigan. It's the legendary #1 versus #2 game in 1985. Little mist in the air. Musco Lighting came in, brought their lights in. Brent Musburger's in town. Eric Parsegian. I mean, back then, you see it every game you want now on TV. Well, back then, as you know, there's a couple of games of the week. We happen to be the game of the week on CBS. So we, you could just, it's hard to describe it. You can cut the tension with a knife all week on campus, but it was so cool to go from class to class, and all your classmates are like, hey, hooting and hollering at you, and good luck and all that. It just was one of those rare weeks at the Iowa campus, because #1 versus #2 really don't play each other in the middle of the week, in the middle of the year. They play at the end of the year, right? So it was a very rare moment for not only college football, but for Iowa. And so they had the great, legendary Bo Schembechler as their head coach. You remember Bo? They had a guy named Jim Harbaugh, quarterback. Okay, you know Jimmy. But anyway, they came to town, and it just was an electrifying. Who was at that game? Raise your hand. All right. It was an electrifying crowd. I mean, they came early, and Hayden always loved to get Bo Schembechler's head. Okay, just loved it. The pink locker room drove Bo Schembechler crazy. Okay, he put all the wallpaper up, the black wallpaper, just to get rid of that pink. Anyway, so he did this. He goes, so Schembechler, we're in the pregame warm up, and Bo had his M sweater on, his M hat, and glasses, and chewing his gum. So he's standing on the sideline watching his team warm up. Nothing's going on yet. So Hayden sends over a fake long snapper and our starting punter right in front of him. And so this fake long snapper, who's never snapped the ball in his life, was snapping the ball into the ground, over the guy's head, into the ground. Schembechler's watching this, and we're watching it all unfold, you know. Coach Fry, come on over here. Yeah, Coach. He goes, you're not going to have this long snapper snap to your punter today, are you? We don't plan on punting today, Coach. And he turned around and walked away. Schembechler was so mad. Legend has it, when he brought the team back up to the locker room for last minute talk, he was throwing garbage cans against the wall. We did punt 6 times that day, by the way. It was a back and forth game, and we finally get another 2-minute drill. You know, we're down 1, 10-9, and legendary kicker Rob Houtland is warming up. So we go on this legendary drive and get it down to the 26-yard line, call our last timeout with 2 seconds to go. And they had 2 timeouts left, so they tried to ice Rob. You know, they called the timeout, tried to ice him, get him all nervous and tense, and then we come back out, and they call another timeout, try to ice him some more. And Rob was so confident in what he did. Rob Houtland's a great story too. He was a walk-on kicker, got cut his freshman year. Talking about perseverance, got cut. Hayden says, come back the following year. Came back the following year, earned a scholarship, and here he is lining up for the greatest kick in Iowa history. And so they asked him twice, and if you're the sideline, you know, if you're the sideline of the team, he walks out to the field, and he gets about this far, he goes, guys, I got this, don't worry about it. So that was just a great moment when he said that, went out there and drilled that kick. And I said in my book, and I'll say it 1,000 times every time I talk about the story, it still gives me goosebumps on the back of my neck to hear the elation of that crowd. That's the greatest crowd that I've ever been involved with. And I was in football a long time. I was at Oklahoma for 6 years under Bob Stoops. We won a national championship in 2000, and I never have heard a crowd since that 1985 legendary kick by Rob Houtland. 40 years next year. So I'm sure we're going to be on the field, you know, us guys next year celebrating that. But yeah, it was a fun career in there, and I went on to professional football for 8 years, Detroit Lions for 7, LA Rams for 1, and then I got into coaching for 20 years, and I came back under Hayden Fry, and I'll never forget, Hayden said, you sure you want to get into coaching, Charlie? I said, yeah, I do. He goes, well, you know, you stay long enough, you're probably going to get fired. You know that. I said, yeah, I understand that, Coach, but I still want to give it a shot. I was fired twice, by the way. But anyway, I went on a nice little journey there. It was really fun. I was with Kirk his first year, 1999. I saw his building blocks and where he was going to go with his team. But then Bob Stoops called me. Bob and I played together at Iowa, and went to Oklahoma. We won the national championship. The first year I was there, I said, oh man, this is great. This is great. We ended up losing 2 others while we were there. Won 3 Big 12 championships and had a really good run. I coached guys like Josh Heupel, head coach of Tennessee. Jason White, who won the Heisman Trophy there. And for all you Viking fans, raise your hand, please. Minnesota Vikings in there. We coached this guy named Adrian Peterson. He's pretty good. But anyway, had a nice run there. Went to San Diego State. Head coach there for 3 years, got fired, and then 2 years at Kansas, and we got let go there. And then I got into the Big Ten Network. Really enjoyed my time there. Learned a lot of football, and then you never say never. You never know where your road's going to take you. And then Bob Stoops became the head coach of the Arlington Renegades for the last 2 years in the UFL Spring League. I don't know if you guys watch Spring League or take naps watching golf, one of the two. But anyway, I was living down in Arlington, Texas from February to May last year, the last couple of years. Living out of a hotel and coaching ball, dipped my toe back in it. I like coaching, but not sure I want to go into a full-time gig in today's NIL and portal world and all that. I really enjoyed the pro football aspect, but I do love my job that I have now. I'm in the Iowa Sports. I run the Iowa Sports Foundation. We are a nonprofit health and wellness sports and recreation foundation. It was actually been around. Iowa Games is our big pillar. Been around since 1987. We have 5 pillars now overall. We have Iowa Games, Senior Games, Live Healthy Iowa, which are web-based challenges to track your health and wellness. We have corporate games. It's really gotten big for us. We have close to 150 companies in our corporate games now, from Des Moines, Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, and the Quad Cities. And we're going to open up in Cedar Valley of Cedar Falls and Waterloo next year. And then Adaptive Sports Iowa, which is near and dear to my heart. They're athletes with disabilities, physical disabilities, and we provide equipment for them. Most notable, the high school athletes that are disabled, we provide sport chairs so they can compete in sports at their high school, like track and field. And if you've ever been down to the Blue Oval at Drake for high school state championships and the Drake relays, you'll see our athletes perform there. Really, really cool, emotional moment, but just great motivational team. But I have a brother who's born with cerebral palsy, so like I said, adaptive sports is really near and dear to my heart and a great pillar for us. But I've enjoyed my journey. Thankfully brought me back to this great state. Love the state here. You never know where you're going to be, especially in coaching. I live in seven different homes, across the country, from obviously growing up in Wheaton to Iowa, to Detroit, to California, back to Iowa, Oklahoma, and then Kansas, back to Iowa. So you never know where you're going to be. In coaching, you always keep one suitcase packed at all times. But anyway, my journey has taken me back here, and I've really enjoyed being back here, getting around the state. It's what I do. I do a lot of traveling. When COVID hit, everybody got shut down, obviously, for a while, but it's nice to be back on the road and getting in front of people again. So that's been my little journey with a couple funny stories along the way. Hayden was a magical second father to me. I miss him. He was just a wonderful human being. Would shake every hand. He just was one of those guys. He'd get to know you, and you felt like you knew him forever. And he turned this whole thing around. He made it possible. He made the impossible possible. And here's a state of Iowa who doesn't have, we don't have a lot of recruits like the state of California, like the state of Texas, state of Florida, very minimal because of population. And look what he did. When I look back on what he did and how he did it, it's just like, I still go, how did he do it? And my simple answer is because of his leadership and who he hired. You have to be able to hire people as good as or better than you are. And that's what he did. He hired future Hall of Fame head coaches. I mean, he knew how to pick people. And that was the most important and best trait that he had. And we flourished under him because of that. But really magical time there. I think next year, 40 years ago, it's just hard for me to believe, It was 40 years ago next year. Where did time go, But I seem to get better with time, 4 touchdown passes turned into 5, it's turned into 6, it's turned into 7, I just keep it going. Yeah, I threw 7 in that game, They add one every decade, right? But anyway, I've had a wonderful time and I've enjoyed every minute of it. So now I want to open up for questions.
Yeah, I have one for you.
Yes.
As a quarterback, when you played, what degree of freedom did you have calling plays? Were they series that went out, or was it a play-by-play from the sideline?
Great question. I haven't been asked that question, I don't think, ever. Is what kind of freedom did I have to call plays? I didn't have any freedom to call the plays. I had the freedom to change the play at the line of scrimmage. But according to Hayden, he would say, if you change the play on me, Charlie, it better work. So that's how he put it to me. But I always made sure I got to a play that would work. And I had to make sure of it. But yeah, he gave me the freedom at the line of scrimmage. Now, at the beginning of my career, no. But as I got older, he gave me more freedom. Yeah. Good question. I've never been asked that before.
How has the NIL and the portal complicated coaching, and how much does money enter into that factor as well?
No, I think it's driven a lot of coaches or driving a lot of coaches out. Nick Saban for being one of them. He wasn't gonna deal with that anymore. I know Bob Stoops doesn't wanna do it anymore. To paint the picture, not only are you recruiting high school athletes, but you're recruiting your own team that you have. So it's like, okay, you might have a player that is disgruntled and comes to you and says, hey, I need some more money. I have a buddy at another major university right now, he's a coach there. I'll give you an example. This past spring, one of his players came out in street clothes, not his uniform, for a spring practice. And my buddy said, what are you doing? What's going on? He goes, I'm not getting as much money as that guy over there, I'm not gonna practice today. And you can't do anything about it because they'll go into the portal the next day. And so that's what they're faced with right now. The UNLV quarterback just quit, just walked off the team because he was guaranteed $100,000 or something like that. They didn't come through, so they're 3-0. They have a great football team. They're 3-0. This guy's playing well. Walked off the team. Yeah. So that's what you're getting today. It's going to be the recruiting living room is changed. So I'm the assistant coach. I go into a living room, and you're going to see the parents. You're going to see the player, the athlete, and you're going to see a lawyer or an agent there. Okay. And you're not talking to the parents really. You're talking to that agent. The agent says, oh, Charlie, that's good. I mean, that's great, all the facilities and the school and all that, but Ohio State's going to give them $500,000. What do you got? So now you have to go back to your head coach. To me, the head coaches today in football or any sport have to be more businesslike, negotiators, salespeople, than head football coaches. That's the future of head football coaching, is more of a CEO type, and then you have your staff do the X's and O's in football. You just stay out as a head coach. You go get the boosters, you go get the money, whatever it takes is what the head coach is going to have to do in the future. So now the head coach has to make a phone call or whatever to his boosters or to the money people and say, hey, Ohio State, 500, what can we do? Caden Proctor of Southeast Polk, you read about him? 5-star lineman out of Southeast Polk, was right there, committed to Iowa, was going to Iowa, and then Alabama came in for $2 million. And that was the end of that. So that's just what you're faced with. It's unfortunate, honestly. You can't really build teams. You have to build teams with chemistry in 1 year, in 1 year time. I think the future is going to be like the NFL. You try to get them under a contract of some sort. So when they do sign with a team, try to get them locked in for 2 years, 3 years before they can do anything like an NFL contract. Right now, it's just anytime. It's just you're a free agent every year. So it's a big challenge. It's a big challenge. And some schools have more money than others. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. Yes, sir?
What's the source of funding then?
Well,
And what's an average big school got to come up with each year to put these teams out there then?
well, they said the average for schools at the very beginning was about $10 million per year. And that was all athletes across the board, men and women. Well, that's gone up. I mean, that's not enough now. So what you're going to see, and I was talking with Jim and the gang at lunchtime about this, don't be surprised. How many have season tickets? Anywhere, Iowa State, Iowa, anywhere. Okay. Don't be surprised if the season ticket holders get, what do you call it? NIL. They'll come up with some fancy name, you look at it and go, okay, what am I giving $100 more per ticket? So I know Tennessee's already doing it. I think Nebraska's on the verge of doing it. You're gonna see more and more fan bases. You'll get you have to give an extra 100 per ticket to go to that game. And that 100 per ticket is gonna go to the athletes. That's what I foresee happening. And it's already been doing across the country. That's going to catch on. So don't be surprised in the future that you'll get of course you'll want your quarterback to play well that they give you a lot of money to, right? And if he doesn't play well, you'll boo him, won't you? Anyway, it'll be more like a professional deal.
I think Tennessee started that this year.
Yeah, they did this year. Yeah. I heard it on ESPN, but I think you're gonna see more and more of that in the future, so. The TV, I love the conferences right now, to be honest with you. The Big 12 did a great job of not only keeping it together, but adding the teams that they did. Iowa State, for these Cyclones in it, they got a chance. They got a chance to win the thing. They got a good football team, but I like how the Big 12 shaped up, and I like how the Big 10 is right now. You have coast-to-coast football. I mean, it's great. I mean, you have USC playing at Minnesota. You have Michigan going out to Washington. You have coast-to-coast football. To put it in perspective, I was in the Big Ten Network, and between all the TV deals, all 14 schools made about $51 million per school that was given to them for television revenue. It's close to $100 million now per school. They've almost doubled their money, adding the 4 West Coast teams. I lived in Southern California for 10 years, and every TV set's turning into USC. And there's a lot of TV sets out there. And that's all advertisers care about, how many television sets are going to see my advertising. And that's how much money I'll give you. So it's really blossomed and really expanded, and the money's going way up. So it's going to be, I like it. I like it.
We're gonna switch you out, big guy.
Oh, running out of juice?
I think it is.
Okay. There you go. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's good.
Not as good, yeah, okay. Yeah, so that's where it's going. Yes, sir.
When you got released at San Diego State, was there a story behind that they made you stay for a while?
Yeah, that's a good story. So, I was telling Jim and the guys at lunch, I needed 5 years to turn that program around, and that's a long story short. I got in the interview, and we were changing everything from a junior college formula to a high school formula in terms of recruiting. But that's a major change. So I told the AD, hey, we need 5 years here to be able to do it before I got the job. You know, okay, we agreed to it. Of course, I got fired in 3. But anyway, there's a California law or rule that says, you know, usually coaches, they get fired, and I got calls to go to another school, they offset the salary. So whatever my salary was as a head coach at San Diego State, the new school will pay whatever, a portion of that for my salary at the new school, and then San Diego State covers the rest. Well, they could have saved a bunch of money by letting me do that. Well, they didn't want me to do that. I thought I'd just go coach and forego the money that they owed me. Well, I said, no, I'm not gonna do that. Well, they stuck me in like a broom closet for a year. I was with one little window, I had a computer and like a little box of pencils in front of me. But it enabled me to really clean out all my coaching files, and it really regrouped me, and I used that to my advantage to do that, and then I had to do some assignments for them and all this kind of stuff for my supervisor. And anyway, yeah, I was in like a broom closet for a year, and then they finally figured out, you know, I think he's not bluffing here, so we better let him move on. And I went to Kansas after that, and they offset the difference, which kept me whole in my contract. So yeah, that's the story. Broom closet. But I was in San Diego, so it wasn't that bad.
I do have a question, but a little bit lighter side. Can I get a rebate back for that Nebraska game? I went to that game.
You did, 1982?
We beat, Nebraska the year before. I was 20 years old. A group of us went over there. The only tickets we get were in the Nebraska section.
Right.
You can only imagine. What did we lose 55-7 or something
No,
like
it's
that?
42-7.
42-7.
Yeah.
It was pain and anguish. You guess what? I've never been back since. Honest to God, that's a true story, and I love. Obviously, I go to.
Was it like a $20 ticket? I'll give you up to $20.
But my question is, what was the jump to pro for you? I mean, when you went from college to pro.
Professional football, it was brutal. It's better now. They're taking care of the players better, better equipment, better helmets. You've all heard about the concussion stuff. I had a few, but I'm doing okay. I go out to Omaha every 5 years or so and get tested for that. So, so far so good. Not a lot of guys are as fortunate, but when I was a player, it was very, very brutal. You know, you can hit the quarterback all you want, and not like today.
Not just the
you know,
speed
you
of the
could-
game.
You can, you know, lead with the helmet and everything. I'll tell you a quick funny story. My very first, I'm glad you brought that up. So I'm in 1986, and I'm in my rookie year, and we play a Monday night game in week 14 against the big bad Chicago Bears. Any Bear fans in here? Okay. And they were rough. Now they're coming off their Super Bowl champion team, 1985, McMahon, Walter Payton, those guys. Well, it's 1986, and I'm not starting yet. I'm just a rookie. We're not having a good record. The owner of the team, William Clay Ford of the Ford family, tells our head coach, "Hey, get Long in there. Okay, it's time for Long." Coach brings me in, Coach Darrell Rogers, and he brings me in. He goes, "Sit down, Chuck." He goes, "I got good news and bad news. The good news is we're going to start you this upcoming Monday night." I go, "What's the bad news?" He goes, "Well, it's against the Chicago Bears, as you know, and they're a little rough. They're pretty good. And they beat up the quarterback pretty bad." So I go, "Oh, thanks, Coach. I appreciate that." So all week long, it's a really nerve-wracking week. Now, they had probably one of the best front sevens defensively in the history of the game. They had Refrigerator Perry, they had Dan Hampton, Steve McMichael, Richard Dent. All of them were all pro. They had Wilbur Marshall, linebacker, outside linebacker. They had Otis Wilson, another outside linebacker, and a guy named Singletary in the middle. They were vicious, and they were a great defensive team. I didn't even know who the secondary was. He never got that far. You know. The very first pass play of my career as a starting quarterback in the NFL, I fade back. First time, and Dan Hampton and Richard Dent meet me at the top of my drop. They got it so fast and sacked me. And Dan Hampton, big D lineman, picks me up off the ground. I'm like, wow. D linemen don't ever pick a quarterback off the ground. They may step on you, you know, all that kind of stuff. I go, man, what a nice gentleman. Well, he picks me up and pulls me and he says, "Hey, Long, I'll save all the language." He goes, "Hey, Long, look, you're in for a long night. We're going to beat you up really bad. You'll survive. You'll survive. They all do. You're in for a real long night, son." I walk back to him and goes, "Oh, man." All right, guys. Please block, please. Anyway, that's the NFL right there. Any other questions? Well, you guys have been a great audience. Thanks for having me today. And I'm glad we have recording buttons on all of our.
You're not quite done.
Okay.
All our guests get 3 gifts.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
first of all, I didn't know you were going to be so funny. I just like you.
People like the funny stories. Don't you like the story? Don't you?
I just like him because he made Bo Schembechler mad.
Yeah. Now, I will say that when Jim introduced me, you know, I was second in the Heisman to Bo Jackson. He was the Heisman Trophy winner that year, but I'm the better athlete. I'll tell you.
First of all, Lakeview's got its own winery.
Oh,
And it's
okay.
called Rustic River. It's
I
run by
love
the
wine,
Phillips.
yes.
And we want you to come back. Jensen's will get a big group together and we'll go out there. It's north of town. They got a barn. It's very tastefully
Oh,
done.
yeah, yeah.
They open up the hatch in the loft and you look over the vineyard. So,
Nice, nice.
and this is the red called Happy Harvest.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. I'm a big red wine fan. I like it.
And also I got a friend, Ellen Manthe Frank, and she's had a coffee business for about 10 years, and it's called Row Route Roaster. This is a dark. She's got beans from all over the world and
I love coffee.
different
Thank you.
roasts.
Yeah, thank you.
Guinea.
You're hitting the right spots right now.
All right, that's one gift, the locals. I need your help on this one.
Okay.
You're not an easy person to shop for. And I went shopping in my basement. Okay. Now our guest a year ago, Art Cohen, was here. He won a Pulitzer several years ago. He's a publisher, newspaper publisher, just a county seat away. He has a book out too. And he's been a baseball fan all his life, specifically the Minnesota Twins. And he's been listening to the Twins on the radio for over 60 years. So when he was here last October, I went down to my basement. I found an old Harmon Killebrew card,
Oh, yeah, I remember him.
big hitter, and I said, throw this in your desk at the paper, and someday you'll be looking for a pencil and you'll remember the day you spent in Lakeview. So I thought we'd do something like that again. Couple problems. I went through your book. Chuck and I are the same age, and that's kind of important on this. And all boys have football heroes and sports heroes. I went through your book a second time, page by page, not a sports hero, a football hero, not even a favorite team. And in fact, the best I found was you like basketball more than football. Is that right?
I thought, yeah, I liked basketball growing up more than I did football.
All right, now the other problem I have is you're a professional. NFL quarterback, and you've been a coach all these years. And so you don't have football heroes. And I understand that. And then Rose Bowl and state championship and things. However, I thought of a player that I am almost certain that you would have a special admiration for. And maybe I'm wrong. I've got two football heroes today, and one of them's called Chuck Long, because he's done a lot for rural Iowa today and over the years, and you didn't have to come here. And this is a perfect example of what he's done for Iowa over the years. My other football hero is called Walter Payton.
Oh, I love Walter.
And the only thing I'm going to tell the audience is the humanitarian award in the NFL is now called the Walter Payton Trophy. And when you and I were in junior high, he starts playing for Chicago Bears.
Mm-hmm.
And then your high school prep standout in Chicago area, you go to the Iowa City, and that's when the Hawks get good. And that's when the Bears start getting good, the early to middle 1980s. You get drafted by the NFL. It's the end of his career, but you're in the same division, Bears and Lions. There must have been a couple homes and aways.
Oh, yeah.
My question for you is, can you tell us anything about the impact he had on Chicago, especially on younger people, you and your friends, younger athletes, or can you say anything about Walter Payton and the presence he had in Chicago after he retired and he died so early? Anything on Walter Payton?
That's an easy answer. So Walter, I grew up with Walter, watching Walter. I was a Chicagoland. He was Sweetness. They called him Sweetness, and he was the king of the city. I mean, they just, even during the losing years of the 70s, he was the king of the city. He had a great impact on the whole community, on the whole city. Everybody loved Walter. Well, my rookie year, okay, I get to watch the great Walter Payton, you know, and we go to Chicago, and I'm not playing yet, and they just came off their Super Bowl year, and it was customary to introduce the offense or defense of each team. Well, they introduced the offense before the game, and they introduced them one by one, and they saved Walter for last. And when they were about to introduce Walter Payton, the entire Soldier Field Stadium crowd stood up on their feet and gave him a standing O. And they didn't do that with the other players. That's a good story. I mean, that's Walter Payton.
Very good.
Yeah.
So I trudged down to my basement and I found a memento. And this is actually pretty cool as these cards go. Back in the 1990s, Donruss, a card company, they got a hold of one of Walter Payton's jerseys that he wore in the game. And he was number 34, and there's a photo on the back of it here. It's a good thing they took a photo of it because they cut it into 34 pieces. And they did a trading card, where there's 34 in the series. And they put the part of the uniform under the plastic. And you can see here it's the orange and the blue with the white stripe. But then they stamped the series, and so 34 cards, and this is the first one in the series, number one. So I'll suggest you throw this in your desk drawer and find a pencil someday and think of Lakeview. Or there's also a picture of your brother with him. Is he doing okay?
Yeah, he's doing great. Thank you. Yeah, he's doing great. Yeah, good research. Thank you. Good research.
The last gift, last January, I mentioned that Charlie Whitmack was here, and for those of you that don't know, he's the first Iowan who's climbed Everest, and he's done it twice. And last fall, I heard that the best gift you can give an attorney is a fountain pen. And at the same time, the day before Thanksgiving, there's a front page Des Moines Register article on the only man in Iowa who handcrafts fountain pens. And his name is Robert Beers. He's down in Valley Junction, West Des Moines. And so I gave him a call and I went down there and I said, what's the best pen you got? And that's what Charlie got a pen. Then in April, we had the Poet Laureate of Iowa here, distinguished professor at Iowa State. And so I called him and I said, Rob, it's Quinn. I said, can you make a pen that's cardinal and gold colors of Iowa State? And he said, yes, I can. I called him in August, Chuck, and I said, guess who's coming? Chuck Long. And he goes, I know Chuck Long. And I go, that's right. The University of Iowa, can you make a pen? Well, he just did this a few weeks ago, and so it's got a black barrel, and then
awesome.
all the connections, the clip, the tips, everything is gold. And here's his card, and if you go down there for dinner or shopping.
I'll go say hi to him, for
Well,
sure.
he's getting a little older, unlike you and me. And you'd really make his day. He's made pens for a lot of notable people.
I love that. What nice gifts. Thank you.
It comes in this leather box, so I take it to Trophies Plus. And they engraved it. It's got your name and
Yep.
today's date, and it says Lakeview Speaker Series, so please remember us.
I'll put a copy on my desk.
Thank you for doing this today. Thanks, everybody, for attending. Drive safe. Valerie Hemingway is going to be here in January, so it'd be great to see everybody again. Jim, is there anything else?
Chuck said he'd stick around and take some pictures
Yep,
and sign some
yep,
things for
take some
anybody if you
pictures
wanted.
over there. I can personalize it as well.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Anybody have a Hawkeye score right now?
No.
7-0.
7-0?
No.
Ohio State?
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't like the Buckeyes. Anyway, thanks everybody, I appreciate it. Great
Tons of cookies and cider and coffee out there, so help yourself.
Yeah, Jordan.